Thank you everyone for joining us. Today you are attending Phil Tuddy's and my webinar on leveraging technology for employee development, key challenges and insights. So without further ado, let's move along. Okay, so first I'd like to introduce Phil and I. Phil, say hi, Phil.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Claire. I'm here.
Hi, Phil. How you going?
Great.
Phil is the head of SAP Litmos training content. He's spent a lot of his life working in online education. He brings a wealth of experience in digital education and remains passionate about the transformative power it can bring to organisations, their people and overall success. He's also my boss, and a good one at that. I have to say that, Phil.
You're saying all the right things, Claire.
I'm Claire. I'm a product manager with a background in education, multimedia and communications. I'm also really passionate about e-learning and about representing the voice of the customer in the business. And I love building products that meet customers and users' needs. So let's talk about the agenda today. So today we're looking at a webinar of an hour in length. We'll have time for questions at the end. And we'll also have some poll questions throughout the presentation. Just a little tip that when we do the poll questions, I'll read them out, but if you can't find the little, if the poll questions don't pop up on your screen from GoToMeeting, you need to go to GoToMeeting and open up the polls functionality. So I'll make sure that I remind everyone of this when we get to it. So the agenda today, it's split into 5 parts. First off, a bit of an intro. We're talking about the new corporate learning landscape. Then we have data-driven decisions and actions, followed by data-driven learning and AI, then technology-enabled learning, and finally, a little look to the future, which Phil will talk about. Okay, so the new corporate learning landscape. Before we move into that, we do have a little poll here. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to answer this question. The question is, what do you see as the, oh, we lost that, hang on a second. What do you see as the biggest technological trends or advances that are impacting online training and learning? Choose all that apply. Okay, so let's look at these polls.
I can't vote, Claire.
Sorry, Phil?
I said I can't vote.
Oh, well, I'm sure there'll be time in this hour for you to give your opinion. And we do have the results. So, oh, it's still happening. I'll just give it a couple more minutes. Okay, so let's see in terms of trends. It's still moving. 59%. So artificial intelligence, AI, seems to have the greatest response here at 59%, followed by big data and data analytics. And then we have, social media platforms, user-generated video sites, and down the bottom is virtual and augmented reality. That's interesting, Phil. I would have thought that might have been further up there. So look, thank you everyone for providing that feedback, and I am glad, based on those polls, that we have a section on AI now. Okay, so look, learning is changing. Technological innovation and consumer trends are leading to organisations diverting their attention away from LMS administrators to the learner. It doesn't mean administrators aren't essential and that organisations aren't, e-learning organisations and LMS vendors aren't catering to administrators, but there is a bit of a shift in focus. Learners now are expecting consumer grade experiences when it comes to learning technology. They don't want to be spoon-fed, and AI in consumer products like Netflix and Facebook has shown all of us that our online behaviour can be used to create more relevant experiences, and that's the case with corporate training as well. I mean, most of us have Netflix subscriptions. We see how content is recommended to you based on previous behaviour. That is AI. Really simple AI, but that is AI. Ultimately, that AI is underpinned by data, and data provides the backbone for all of this behaviour. And LMS vendors have picked up on this trend. It's led to more focused, more learner-focused online learning delivery. For example, even in our SAP Litmos platform, we recommend content to learners based on what they've completed in the past. And going even further in the market, in the online learning market in general, we're seeing LMSs having to compete with new learning experience platforms and human experience management platforms. Phil will cover a bit of that later, but it just goes to show you that this landscape we're looking at is changing. So what does this mean for HR and L&D departments? It means we need to listen to learners and we need to give them the content they need when they want it. Now, what else are we seeing? We're seeing learning personalisation. It's a broad term, but it really means catering the learning to the needs, interests and preferences of the learner. It puts the learner at the centre. It takes the focus away from top-down training to, well, I guess this makes me giggle, but bottom-up training. There's been a shift in learning. Companies are looking beyond just tick and flick compliance-based training to skill and role-based training. And learning is starting to it's now being seen as more of a continuous journey that requires a range of content types in terms of format and length, delivered as and when people need it and according to their skill level, just as learners learn outside of work. Duolingo, the language app, is a great example of that. In fact, e-learning companies are even shifting their focus from LMS administration to learner needs and also reposition their products to offer better learning experience, a more engaging, personalised approach for users that offers content curation, collaborative social learning and shorter, more targeted learning. And all this is possible because of data, which Phil is going to talk about shortly. So part 2, data-driven decisions and actions. Now, we've got another poll here. So Phil and I really look forward to hearing your responses to this one. I'll read out the question. What data do you use to drive your decisions in HR? Choose all that apply. A, LMS metrics. B, personal development and review data. C, work health and safety data. D, staff engagement and satisfaction data. Or E, other.
It's interesting too, that so much stuff, we've got access to so much data and information these days, don't we? When you look at all of the systems that sort of interact and overlay with HR and learning and development, we've just got so much access to information, and it's how we use that stuff that's really critical, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a goldmine of information and data and metrics that organisations are sitting on that they don't necessarily use or use in a smart way. So,
and this sorry, you go on.
No, go Phil, go.
No, I was going to say it's interesting looking at the staff engagement and satisfaction data, and that's probably one of the things that we start to see a lot more of these days, and more organisations using that. So I'm not surprised that's up there at 81%.
Yeah, that's right. And right behind that, we've got personal development and review data. That's pretty high as well. Followed by work health and safety data, and also LMS metrics. That's quite high at 38%. And then obviously there's some other data in there as well that our attendees are using. So thank you very much for that feedback. That's really interesting to see. Over to you, Phil.
So I suppose what I wanted to talk a bit about here was just the importance of data and how data can drive a lot of decisions and improvements in HR. And just I suppose part of my background, I came at one stage off a really large quality project. And so I sort of immersed myself a bit in quality management years ago. But the quality movement really started to look at the importance of making decisions based on facts and data. You know, this is sort of World War II stuff that was really focusing on data as a basis of making informed decisions and actions. And I think organisations have really known this for a long time. They've always found better ways of accessing, analysing, presenting data to support decision making. And just to give you an example, I work with Andy in marketing very closely, and we sit down every week. And a large part of our conversation is around lead management and inbound leads and the metrics that we have. And so we talk about things like conversion rates through various stages of the sales cycle, about the cost of leads, about the time to convert. It's a very numbers focused conversation that we have. And what we're doing all the time is trying to look at how we improve our strategy, improve our tactics, and make decisions weekly on the basis of a really, really sort of honed in conversation on data. And I think for a long time, HR's probably stayed outside of this type of conversation, but I have always had a belief that HR needs to embrace data to get a seat at the table to discuss business issues. So it's really important that from a HR perspective, we start to embrace data. HR's always had access to a lot of it, and the previous slide really showed that. It's sort of really heartening that people can have this conversation and have this recognition that they do have access to a lot of different data to make improvements. But we've been working at things like data analytics, you know, big data, and looking at ways of how we go about improving it. But data helps employers and HR areas predict employee movement. It helps us plan HR talent and skills needs and clarify long-term recruitment goals. We've got data, as you said there, in training systems, performance management, recruitment, succession planning, talent management. We also have data that comes outside of our traditional HR areas. So, you know, we have data that even comes from sales, from marketing, customer feedback. A lot of these things have a major impact in terms of what our data-driven insights are going to be in HR. And I suppose, you know, what does this mean at the end of the day? It means if data is used smartly, we can optimise processes, make employees happier, and offer greater value for organisations. And for the HR department, you know, being able to use this data in conversations with the rest of the organisation, it gives HR the opportunity to have much more business-focused conversations. It's interesting, someone sort of shared a number with me that said 82% of organisations are currently or planning to use big data in HR. I mean, it's now become part of sort of a mainstream way that organisations are managing the HR function. So the challenge for organisations is how we use the data more effectively in the way that we develop our employees. You're going to talk a bit about this later, Claire. And how we use this data to improve development outcomes. And we're going to talk a bit about that and a bit around training design too.
Great.
So the other thing that we're seeing at the moment is a change in the way that HR technologies are sort of focusing. I think for years, HR technology's been it's been focused on process automation. So it's around how do we generate improvements, how do we drive efficiency, how do we free up HR to make more strategic contributions to organisations' success. I mean, that's a good thing, and I think that's been something which historically has been really productive. But I think what we're seeing now is a shift around data quality to make the organisation have better decisions when it comes to the workforce. You know, technology is sort of at that inflection point now where it's moving. Oops, just go back a bit, Claire. It's, you know, technology is really now shifting its focus to look at the way that technologies work with people and the processes and the touch points that they have with it. And it's really around making technology a lot more people focused. And I can just look at this from our own perspective on the way that learning management systems have evolved and grown, is that the really, really hot topic of LMS design these days is trying to make it user-friendly, how to make it intuitive, how to make that sort of interaction between people and the platform work really, really well. And the idea of the data and the sort of the processing functionality is taken as a given now. And it means that we need to expand our focus of HR technology. It's not about data, but it has to have a real human focus to it. And we're starting to move now, we're starting to shift away from this concept of human capital, where people are seen as assets that we need to maximise, to human experience management that I'll talk about in a second. And it's really where we put people at the centre of everything that powers an organisation. And so I just want to talk about this concept of human experience management. I suppose the experience economy, and I'll just position this in this way, but the experience economy has really changed the way that organisations operate. We've moved through a whole lot of different stages of organisations. We've gone from agrarian to industrial to services to subscriptions, and now we're talking about the experience economy. And so, you know, the experience economy is the way that it's more than products and services, but it's the way that we engage and interact with people. And it's really changed the way that organisations compete. Organisations these days have got to focus on listening to the beliefs, emotions, and sort of intentions of customers, employees, suppliers, partners, all sorts of other stakeholders. And we know that in the experience economy, probably 80% of customers will choose to switch brands if they have a poor experience. 2/3 of the workforce is actively disengaged, and 2 million employees turn over or change jobs every year because of negative experiences in the workplace. So there's a much greater focus now on experience, and the experience from customers and people. And just to give you a couple of really sort of simple examples is, you know, if we look at the experience economy, it's more than products and services, but it's the experiences that bind these products and services and really touch the emotions. I use Uber as a really good example. At the end of the day, it's the same product as a taxi. It's going to transport you from A to B. But it's got a really simple app to book. It gives you real-time information on where the ride's arriving. It's got a really simple payment app. You get visibility on rating drivers and how they go. And this whole experience all tied in, and it's technology tied in with that experience that makes it really good. I mean, a fantastic induction program these days is not just about content, you know, and organisation. It's about that great event that we organise, the lunch or a networking session or a meet and greet with the CEO, something that's memorable, that sticks in people's minds. So I suppose, you know, what we're seeing now is a human experience management as a category that's built around that experience economy that reflects the evolution from human capital management to the need to help organisations shift their focus from transactions to human experiences that are going to accelerate growth. And again, it picks up that point we've made a couple of times before. It puts employee experience at the centre, and it shifts the focus away from top-down sort of autocratic HR decision-making processes to make them people-centric. And it means designing for employees based on behaviour and what motivates them, what inspires them, and leveraging technology in a new way. So it's, you know, it's no longer just a matter of having systems that are pushing HR processes and programs top down. It's really where the priority is placed on the individual and putting them at the centre of things. So this is probably another trend that we're starting to see, and this is having a really big impact on the design of technology and learning.
So I'm hearing what you're saying. It's really interesting. So I'm trying to understand human experience management. So are you saying that where human capital management focus primarily on employees. Human experience management focuses not just on the workforce and employees, but also customers, partners, contractors.
It does to an extent, but I think human capital management was this idea at one stage of optimization and efficiency. I mean, it's treating your human, the people in your organisation as assets that you've got to optimise in a way. And now it's the day-to-day experiences that people have in organisations that are really providing that attachment and that motivation to stay in places. And I always say it's a simple thing of, we know that if customers have a bad experience, they'll go and find another vendor. I mean, we're in a very competitive world these days, moving into it, where staff will make decisions based on the things that are going on there. And people, there was the survey that we looked at a while ago that was saying the type of experiences people have with technology is what drives them out. I mean, I can talk from personal experience that we introduce a new CRM into our business and our salespeople don't find that as simple or intuitive as the previous system that they've used. It just becomes a real demotivator for them. And that becomes one of the things that people use to start to move on. Whereas you get much more, or we have training programs or training tools that are much easier to use and engage people more. That's the sort of thing that's going to counteract negative impressions that people have of businesses. So we need to make things more employee focused and make sure our technologies are reflecting that as well too.
Thanks, Phil. That was really interesting. And just following on from that, we're going to take a deeper dive now into data, and then this time we're going to focus on how we can use it for learning. So data-driven learning and AI. We do have another poll here. I'll just read that out for you all. Do you believe AI will significantly change your role in the future? Yes, no, not sure. It's a big question, really, isn't it? It sort of sounds like something from the future. But I did read somewhere that a lot of people are genuinely concerned or at least, thoughtful and aware of the fact that AI will change their jobs in the future. So interested to see the responses here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a big number, isn't it?
It is 65%. 65% the attendees today have said that they think AI will change their job in the future. 10% have said no, which is I'm surprised how low that is actually, and the rest are not sure. So thank you for that. That is really interesting. Okay. Okay, so using data to drive learning. Okay, so, we've talked a lot about data, but the question is, how can you use your data? How can you use your data to better meet your training objectives? And what else can you use it for? Before we get to that, let's talk about where data in learning might be useful. So, look, there's some obvious answers here. There is LMS data. There is assignment and completion metrics based on the content that your learners are completing, the topics that they're completing. Completion rate is a really good metric. Then we have information around preferences. You can see that through favorited, shared, or recommended content. You can get a feel for what your learners are consuming. And then there's learning surveys as well, direct feedback from your employees. And what does it help you do? What can you do with that data? Well, you can improve your training plan, you get improved evaluation of training and outcomes, and improved learning outcomes in general as well. And look, this leads us onto AI too, since AI is, of course, driven by data and uses that data to provide intelligent solutions and insight. And Phil, the AI expert, is going to talk a little bit more in detail about this right now. Thanks, Phil.
So it's funny you said before, Claire. I mean, when people, I did a presentation on this towards the end of last year, and the feedback I got from people was that, look, artificial intelligence, it's in the future. It's not really here now. It's something which has been sort of part of sci-fi for years, something that people have been talking about. And what we've got to recognise is that it's AI is here and now. It's a disruptor. It is changing the way that we work and how our output's measured. But it's a massive growth area. I think McKinsey has come up with a number that says AI technologies are set to generate between $3.5 and $5.8 trillion in annual revenue globally.
Wow.
And what we're seeing is huge numbers of service support being done by virtual assistants. And so AI is already here. It's part of the workforce. It's part of the way that we're living. It's just interesting. In today's age, there was a story I was reading earlier this morning that's talking about how they're using AI in coronavirus tracing activities that they're doing now. And you said before, I mean, you look at Spotify and you look at Netflix, and they're using machine learning or AI algorithms to be able to push out and recommend things to you. But just I'll give you a couple of examples. I won't go into this in complete detail, but AI in recruitment is one of the areas that's been really fast to embrace this. So if you think about how you go about streamlining the process to create a winning advertisement or write more compelling job descriptions. There's software already that uses AI to help recruiters write much more compelling job descriptions, to use data that it's collected from other job postings or similar postings from other companies. And it makes suggestions in the wording and the format and the content that's generated. And also, it can also pick up the success factors that they've had in terms of what's worked with other ads and job descriptions. And there's also a lot of tools in recruitment that match candidates to jobs. So, the task that we have of having 200 resumes when things come in, there's a lot of tools around using AI and machine learning to track the types of credentials, qualities, experiences that employees are looking for, and then make recommendations based on that. And AI is doing things like, it's eliminating repetitive tasks. There's a great plugin of Zoom that transcribes meetings and publishes them as sort of searchable text. You've got things that will help you transcribe and distribute meeting notes in a really, really simple way. Or things like fraud and security, where you get the phone call from I'm with one of my banks is the NAB, and so you'll get calls from the NAB to say we've detected a strange transaction and we just want to check with you that this is yours. And that's all using AI just to be able to track some weird transactions on your card. Your bank will be using this sort of thing to be able to improve the conversation that you're having with them. We're even at SAP. I mean, part of our platform at Success Factors is using AI to be able to eliminate bias in job descriptions. So to take away biased sort of content and text in there. And as I said, the contact tracing that's going on with the Victorian government's coronavirus tracing is also using it. But it's a theoretical issue and probably an ethical issue that we could go on forever about, because one of the things that we worry about is we understand that AI is transforming the workplace. We understand that it's also improving productivity. And I suppose one of the things that people are having a conversation about, not for now, but it's about what it means for the workforce of the future. Is it eliminating jobs? Is it creating jobs? Is it going to make the workplace better or worse? And essentially, AI, or automation broadly, or machine learning, it frees employees up from routine tasks to make them more empathetic, to focus on things like customer experience, employee engagement, and culture. So it's taking away the routine things and making us able to focus on things that are better. You've got a driver update. You want to?
Yes.
Quick talk? Are you worried that's going to take over your computer?
Yeah, I'm trying to cancel that down. So sorry about that, everyone.
It always happens at the most inopportune time. Can you move that text box over to the right so that people can see the slides?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Maybe just try that. And we'll
Can we see that?
No.
1 second, guys. It's me.
It had to happen now, didn't it?
Yeah, it's sorry about this, everyone. I can't actually
get rid of it.
Get rid of it.
All right, we have to bear with it. That's all right. So look, I just want to move on from there about artificial intelligence in learning and development, because this is really one of the things that you've identified as participants, this as being a trend. So I'll just sort of build out some of these themes. It's organisations are becoming, as organisations are becoming more data driven. Now, learning and development is starting to leverage that and build on that. And what's happening in learning and development is the fact that AI, machine learning, are going to draw on that data to be able to improve, sort of the efficiency, the personalisation, the adaptability in learning. And the key thing is, employees don't need to learn the same course content. I mean, what it really means is that content can be personalised to suit a learner's needs, focus on their weaker areas, to recommend suitable content based on past behaviour, to predict learning needs based on their role, or even auto-generate content in various content creation algorithms. I'll talk about that in a second. But in order for AI to be utilised fully, you've got to harness the data using machine learning. And so the output of this is learning and development departments being able to gain insights into the learner journey. So what we're seeing now is already how AI is able to tailor the learning to individual and organisational needs by pulling together that data and that information. It's helping us plan learning strategies by having that information available to us and the data available to us. We're able to plan learning strategies, learning activities a lot better. It's helping us improve efficiencies in outcomes by tailored and targeted learning that suits people a lot better. It's helping us evaluate success in an unbiased way. I mean, one of the things that we've always dealt with is sort of the inherent bias in a lot of the assessment tools that we use. And artificial intelligence is really helping us overcome that bias and provide more meaningful and unbiased feedback on people. It's helping us predict learning roadblocks in learners, to take the guesswork out of planning, to shorten the learning timeframes. And if we can get more targeted and tailored learning for learners, AI is going to be able to deliver that training in a much shorter time frame, increase completion rates, because what we're seeing is better and more personalised learning, and help us measure the ROI on it. But this stuff's happening right now. Just to give you a couple of examples, we've got in the Litmos platform, we have a video assessment tool where learners can take a video of themselves doing a presentation and upload that to the platform, and then get feedback on what that presentation's like. And so it sort of provides unbiased feedback using machine learning or artificial intelligence. So I can measure the cadence of speaking. It can measure words that shouldn't be used in a presentation versus words that should be used. It can look at the rate of speech. It can provide feedback on the overall sentiment of that presentation. It's perfect for sort of sales or customer facing staff to generate presentations and get feedback. The other thing that we're working on now using artificial intelligence is a way of creating content, video content in some of our courses, whereby we have pre-recorded video vignettes that can incorporate language from different people. And basically it's an AI video vignette that we use in our courses. And this is dealing with one of the big issues that we have with how we go about translate courses really quickly and how we do it really simply. And this technology is amazing in terms of what it's doing to be able to create content in really smart and effective ways. So I'll just touch on this because I'm just conscious that we've got a bit to go through. But these are what I'm seeing as top 10 trends for AI. It's the personalisation of learning. It's the capacity of learning management systems to serve up content based on preferences, past performance or usage. Serving up content, the type of content or recommended courses or tailored courses for a particular learning. Predictive machine learning. I mean, we've talked about a little bit about sort of the predictive stuff, but it's, again, it's trying to get better linkages between training activity as to whether people are changing. Did the training work? Is that working? Chatbots are really big at the moment, and they're already being used in learning platforms and collaboration sites where people can interact with the chatbot to ask a question. They'll work as learning buddies or virtual tutors. Recommendation engines, we've already touched on that, but that's becoming all pervasive in terms of learning management systems these days. Everyone's got some capacity to be able to recommend courses based on past choices or data sourced from outside. Can also recommend learning based on skill level. So the recommendation engines are also saying, look, you're at this level. This is the content that you need to do to be able to progress. And they'll become a lot more predictive as a learning tool later on. AI virtual tutors, these are things we're going to start to see more and more. I mean, the vision would be to have in an application a virtual tutor where you're using some software, you can ask the tutor a question and you're getting training delivered while you're actually in the sort of the application. And this is, we talk about the flow of work. Tools to create digital training content. Imagine what we'll see soon is we can search for information and convert that into a human readable format that could go into an e-learning course. Intelligent assessment engines, I've talked about it before, but basically, things like the video tool I talked about before that takes some of the bias out. Integrating performance data into learning. I think some of the people were talking about that in the poll question. That's a big area because what it comes to there is being able to make training more focused on performance improvement rather than just broad skills development. And the analytics part is a big part of AI that we're starting to see. So these are probably the big things that I'm seeing in the learning environment at the moment that are all becoming more and more advanced week by week.
It's hard to keep up, Phil.
Yeah, it is. And just to sort of pick up one of the other bits of feedback that we had before, I mean, this augmented reality, virtual reality, it's sort of all part of a broad subset of immersive learning. I think, Josh Bersin talks about this concept of immersive learning that lets people have some form of authentic practice in the learning design. And I think, this is sort of the view that learning retention is better when you can practice what you've learnt. And I think about sort of simple examples of that. My kids are both lifesavers, and so they will do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation training or CPR training that's done in a classroom and follow that up with using mannequins or dummies as a way of practicing that. And that's really sort of early stage immersive learning. Augmented reality is now the reality that applies to the real world and adds to what's going on around you. So, it doesn't hold back sights and sounds and smells, but it adds to everything as you're going around and layering content on top of the reality that we already use. Virtual reality takes a completely sort of different view and it takes over the world of the user and it immerses them in a probably a different dimension. Takes the users out of their world and drops them in a new one, and it's designed completely by technology as opposed to the reality of people around you. It's to come to the point about where the growth of this is. There was a Pricewaterhouse report, I think it was late last year, that was predicting that 23.5 million jobs worldwide will be using AR or VR for their training in 2030, or for work meetings, or to provide better customer experience. So this thing's happening already. Just to give you a couple of examples, and again, just to sort of say this is not in the future, this is stuff that's happening now. I did a project with an organisation that was delivering training for carers of patients with dementia, and traditional e-learning was all fine. You can explain to people the concepts of how people with dementia have issues around sort of spatial views of things, or moving around organisations, or the way that they see colours and patterns. But we designed up a dementia training virtual reality tool for people, and it actually created a view of a room that was mirroring what it's like for a dementia patient. And it was really powerful, just the way that we could replicate that experience for people and put into practice what it was like as a dementia patient, or a person with dementia. The other thing we've worked on in the past is how we manage the orientation to new workplaces. So we developed up another, with a partner, with another virtual reality tool that would place people in the new office that they were moving to. So we're managing a relocation of a workplace from one place to another. And the VR tool replicated what the new workplace looked like. I mean, we've seen a lot of stuff, product training on cars. SAP's got a neat tool where, through augmented reality, you can walk around a store and look at products on a shelf and be delivered product training on that particular product. So this new reality is really where we're at right now.
I think what's interesting too is that right now, with COVID changing the way we work and the ability of people to attend their workplaces, that's got to be an accelerator of this type of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, they've already said that. I was looking at something a while ago that was looking at just the uptake of virtual reality has had another spike as we've gone into sort of the COVID time and working from home.
Thank you for that. So moving on to technology-enabled learning and another poll. So this is an easy one. What format or style of online training do you receive the most positive employee feedback on? Choose the option that applies. So just a reminder there that if the poll doesn't pop up, just to open up your toolbar in GoTo and select that. So I can see the responses are coming in. It's exciting. It's exciting to see the feedback and the numbers going up and down, Phil. I'm on tenterhooks. What's going to win? So let's have a look. We've got, just in terms of the options, we've got live action, non-animated video, animated video, micro learning in general, adaptive learning, or other. So, oh, okay, the responses are in. It's very, very close. 25% said micro learning in general. Now that wins by a whisker, because after that we have a 24% live action, i.e. non-animated video, and live action video, both the same at 24%. And then at 22% we have adaptive learning. So yeah, that tells you that there is pretty much an equally positive response for all those features. So that surprises me too. Yeah.
Nothing really in that, is there?
No. So thank you for that, everyone. Moving on now.
And look, the challenge now is, I mean, given all the stuff that we're talking about sort of emerging technologies, about the importance of data, about how we're going about designing learning. I mean, the opportunity for all of us is to embrace technology willy-nilly. And probably my point here, and it's more of a point of caution in some ways, is that we really need to be sort of focusing on how we go about harnessing that technology, about looking at the business benefits that are coming out from it, how you make any sort of decisions around technology very people focused and putting people at the center of it, and making sure that we're focusing on how we go about making sure that technology is not an outcome in itself, but a platform that's going to enable outcomes for learners. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's going on around us. It's coming up with a real business decision in there. And the examples that I've worked in the past where we've rolled out quite innovative technology it's really been based around a specific problem or a specific challenge that we were trying to focus on, and make sure that we were solving a particular problem in there. Where are you, Claire?
Sorry, I moved forward.
That's all right. But I suppose that's my point. I mean, the technology's there. It's really how you harness it. And I think, so my point is that really think about what you're trying to achieve, the outcome that you've got, that you're looking for, and really building new innovations in technology around very specific problems that are business critical and have an outcome that can be measured really, really well. And that's how you'll get success. So, and learning technology is really, really critical at the moment. You know, it's addressing things like how we're dealing with remote workforces and extended enterprise, how we allow people to consume their training from home, hone their skills from home. And this is more and more of an issue in terms of what we've got now with people working remotely. I mean, using Zoom integrations to be able to take content that's created and get it into the platform, to be able to build capacity for rapid, flexible response. How learning technology can deploy training immediately. I think it was one of the things that we're able to respond to really quickly when we went into remote working or lockdown. It's how organisations had to make the switch to working from home, and how we supported them working from home through training. And without a learning technology approach, that wouldn't have been possible. It was just interesting. We've looked at training patterns since the work from home thing started. Training consumption has peaked massively in the month of April. It's about 80% up on the month before. So people are embracing the technology while they're working remotely, and they're picking up things like ergonomics and time management courses that are really important. One of the things that we did was that we developed an adaptivity academy, a free resource at SAP Litmos, to be able to provide training activities and content out to people and make that available. And that was really essential for that sort of rapid response that we had with it. Technology's got to be adaptive to learner needs. It's got to make sure that people can learn whatever device they want when they need it. I mean, I think, one of the poll questions was around adaptive technology. What we've found is that we can now, using adaptive technology, create compliance courses that will deliver compliance content based on people's learning gaps. So rather than just doing sort of the sausage factory compliance courses where everybody needs to do the same bullying course, by using adaptive technology and answering questions, we can tailor learning to what people's learning needs are. And having this adaptive technology in our platform means that people can do compliance courses in 5 minutes rather than 30 minutes. I think the other thing in technology is how it leverages data to improve decisions. We've talked a bit about that before, and builds networks of learners. So user-generated content in tandem with social learning is going to help learners engage with other colleagues while they're sharing recommendations and online content.
Moving along?
Moving along.
Okay, looking to the future. So we're going to sum up a bit here, and Phil's going to talk about a bit about what to expect. First off, though, the poll. Again, if the poll doesn't pop up, just go down to your go-to toolbar and select it. The question is, what digital trends and advances do you hear discussed the most in HR and L&D circles? Choose all that apply. We have big data and data analytics, AI and machine learning, personalised learning, social learning, or other. We'll see what comes up here. Okay, I mean, the results are pretty clear already. Personalised learning, number one.
Yeah.
Followed by big data and data analytics. Personalised learning is definitely right at the top there.
Yeah.
So thank you, everyone. It just sort of reflects what we've been saying, I think, during this webinar. Okay, so what are the consequences for L&D and HR? I'll move through this quickly because I know we only have a little bit of time for questions at the end. Well, ultimately, it means we've got more products and product features to choose from when it comes to our learning technology. And we have changing expectations from learners. It's not all about tick and click compliance anymore. We need to start providing content. Well, let me put a caveat here and say there is always a need for compliance training, but wherever possible, we need to be providing content to learners that is relevant, that is short, that allows them to learn in the flow of their work day. Really immersive learning we're talking about here. And you know, the other thing is that learners are also expecting training that is based on their skills, that helps them to develop the skills they need, not only for their current job, but for future jobs. Gone are the days where we stay at the same company for most of our working life. Employees need to know that they've got the skills to do what they do now, and that they have the skills to make themselves attractive on an increasingly competitive job market. Phil.
I'm going to go off script for a second here and pick up 2 points that the poll question raised and probably refocus on those as trends. And I think the issue of personalisation and data-driven learning, I think 100% agree. I think that it's great to get that feedback from people. So, you know, in terms of looking out for the personalisation of training, it's going to be huge. I think, you know, it's suggestions and course recommendations based on past choices. It's kind of there now. These recommendations are helping us personalise training. And I think there's enough examples now, including what we develop around adaptive learning based on learner interaction, so we can adapt learning to people. I think that's stuff which is really embedded at the moment in a lot of solutions, what I'm saying. But I think what we'll start to see is the extension of that type of thing to personalised learning based on performance or task-based performance. So, you know, the next sort of thing is how we take feedback from customers or feedback from people actually in the task of work, in the flow of work, and we use that to personalise learning. You know, and in some ways it's taking customer feedback data that might be in a call centre and feeding it to people to say, well, we can personalise a learning program for you based on what your customers are saying, or performance-based stuff. You know, it's like the old in application training that people have got to say, it looks like you need some help with this, let's get some training. But I think, you know, the other thing we'll see is learning in a format that's based around an individual's learning style. So just to sort of visualise an AI-powered tool that can tailor content to people based on their learning styles, where it can make a suggestion, say, well, take this face-to-face training course you're struggling with, or take this content in this format that you've got. So the personalisation is going to expand beyond just what we've got at the moment. And just going back on script, the data-driven learning part, you know, it's more predictive learning that's based on performance data. I'm sort of really interested in now in this whole concept of how we're moving away from broad-based skills development to more performance-based training. So it's training that's going to help people in the task at hand, which is a lot more tailored and targeted, and where the data's coming from to do that. And what that's going to end up doing is changing and improving sort of task performance that people have, and putting learning really in that sort of flow of work. And, you know, and that's also, again, based on customer data and training. So that's my bit.
Thanks, Phil. Now, we don't have much time left, but we do have some time for maybe 1 or 2 questions if you want to send them through. Let's just see what we have here. Okay, we've already got some. Let's have a look here. Got quite a few, Phil.
Let's get ripping.
Okay. Okay, this is a really good point from Renee. Renee has said, how can we be people focused especially if people are dealing with, say, grief, loss and trauma, if we're focusing on big data?
To think about that, and I don't think the two things are necessarily mutually exclusive. So, the data part doesn't mean to depersonalize things, and it doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity to deal with really, really emotional issues for people. And it might be that big data is providing you with tools and insights that help you deal with people who are at a time of grief. I mean, it might be that you've got an intelligent bot that's able to provide feedback, task-based feedback on how to have conversations with people. If you've got an employee that's that is suffered a recent loss, for example, I mean, I can see big data being able to, and some of the AI tools being able to provide much more rich and immediate feedback on how to handle that situation.
Yeah, I think the point is, Phil, that the use of data is a support to what HR professionals already do, which is, you know, they're in the nature of humans, of dealing with people and all the complexities that involve. But data can help you take away some of the ambiguities when it comes to perhaps having discussions with employees.
And I think, and just quickly, because we're probably on sales, but it's also about the way that artificial intelligence can also free up time from mundane tasks to make people more empathetic and deal with people-based issues. And I think it's not about trying to say data, AI, machine learning is going to deal with all of the nuanced issues that we face day by day. It should be about how it supplements and supports those things. And I think we're barking up the wrong tree if we feel that AI is going to provide that sort of human element. It should be supplementing what we do from a human interaction perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we've got another question here. I'll look at time for one more question. Kerry has said, what kind of software organisations using that produce compliance training focus on gaps rather than the traditional approach?
You can answer that, Claire.
Yeah, I can answer that. I mean, there are a few organisations that more and more are focusing on adaptive learning. I mean, we are one at SAP Litmos. We've released a couple of suites that use adaptive learning to help with refresher compliance training. It's really simple. It's pre-assessment based. Learners answer questions around their knowledge of the topic, and based on those responses, they're given content that addresses those gaps. It's really useful because it makes for shorter training, it makes for more relevant training, and it allows a more modular, personalised approach for the learner. And we do see that happening more at other organisations as well. And in fact, adaptive learning in the academic sector has become quite advanced. I can think of one company, Smart Sparrow, who have done just a stellar job with their adaptive learning, and they've actually used some really in-depth AI to make it targeted and relevant and to scaffold learners as they move through the content as well. I think, Phil, we've come to the end, but I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. I know we had a couple of technical issues. I'm sorry about that. I myself am working from my daughter's bedroom today. But thank you for joining us, and Phil, and coming on this journey with us.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It's great.
Thanks,
Thank
Phil.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.